Dyslexia often comes as a package deal, meaning that you don't just have dyslexia, but that you have another additional learning difference aside from your dyslexia. This is true for over 62% of dyslexics. Hey there, welcome back. My name is Arije. I'm a dyslexic in the field of education studies, and I'm going to go about this topic by first giving you some general information. Then I'm going to go over the most common combinations, meaning dyslexia and ADHD, dyslexia and dyscalculia, dyslexia and dysgraphia, and lastly also dyslexia and anxiety disorder. So the first thing that you should know is that having a combination between dyslexia and another learning difference is the rule rather than the exception. And that is because there are shared risk factors, underlying issues that different learning differences have in common. And if we know about this, if we understand the individual as a whole, then we're able to help them a lot better. So let's get into the first combo. Dyslexia and ADHD. In general, children with ADHD have trouble concentrating, controlling impulsive behavior, and often they're overly active. And given the prevalence of one of them, so either dyslexia or ADHD, the likelihood that you have both is around 40%. We don't fully understand why dyslexia and ADHD often is a package deal, but we do know that there are shared genetic factors that play a role, and we also know that children with reading difficulties often also have issues with attention. If you think you might have ADHD in addition to dyslexia, then ask yourself these questions. Do you have trouble finishing tasks? Do you stand up in situations where you're supposed to remain seated? Do you have trouble concentrating on what people say to you, even when they speak to you directly? How often do you find yourself finishing a sentence of the people you are talking to before they can finish it themselves? If you just thought, well, that sounds like me, well, then there's a chance that you have ADHD in addition to your dyslexia. Let's move on to the next one, which is dyslexia and dyscalculia. People with this condition have generally trouble with math. And if you have dyslexia already, the chances that you also have dyscalculia are around 40% as well. Researchers have pointed out that dyslexia and dyscalculia have shared processes when it comes to working memory, semantic memory, and also verbal processes. So if you think you have dyscalculia in addition to dyslexia, then ask yourself these questions. Do you often use your fingers when you have to perform a math task? Do you seem to forget common math facts? For example, the times table. Do you have trouble telling the time on an analog clock? Or do you have trouble when you have to give out change? Or when you have to calculate the tip for a waiter? So all of these questions apply to me to a certain extent. So I believe that I have dyscalculia in addition to dyslexia, even though it has never been officially diagnosed. The next combination is dyslexia and dysgraphia. Dysgraphia has to do with writing, primarily handwriting, and it affects fine motoric skills. It's often been said that dyslexia and dysgraphia are like two sides of the same coin. It's hard to determine how many dyslexics also have dysgraphia, but we do know that the correlation between reading performance and writing performance is around 70%. Dyslexia and dysgraphia have multiple different elements in common. For example, auditory processes, working memory, phonemic awareness, and visual attention. So if you think you might have dysgraphia as well, here are some questions for you. Is your handwriting hard to read, even for you? Are you told that you hold a pen strangely or awkwardly? Do you avoid or dislike drawing, tracing, or painting? And is your handwriting in general kind of messy? If you answered yes to some of these questions, then it is possible that you have not only dyslexia but also dysgraphia. So dyslexia and anxiety disorders. In general, dyslexics do have higher levels of anxiety. Here you see the levels of non-dyslexics, and if we compare that to the levels of dyslexics, we see quite a high increase. However, having higher levels does not mean that you have an anxiety disorder. The chances that you do, given you have dyslexia, are around 29%. Researchers seem to explain this in two different ways. Either they say it's the anxiety that causes trouble, for example, in reading, or they say it's the repeated failure due to their dyslexia that causes anxiety. In case you think you might have an anxiety disorder in addition to your dyslexia, ask yourself these questions. Have there been times you weren't able to identify exactly what the cause of your anxiety was? Have you had trouble falling asleep or staying asleep? Have you felt shaky, wobbly, experienced numbness or tingling, chills or hot flashes while feeling anxious? Have you been unusually irritable? So also here, have a look if these questions apply to you. And I think it's good to remember that we are able to help individuals with learning differences way better if we understand them as a whole. If you want to do me a favor, then give this video a like and see you in the next video.